Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Damien's Midweek Markets, the show where I talk about what's been going on in investment markets and what to look out for in the days and weeks ahead. Now, I've had a 2-week break from this show, and usually that means there's been a lot going on and a lot to talk about when I come back into the studio. But we're in a summer lull at the moment, and to be honest with you, hardly anything has really happened fundamentally to markets. So just to highlight that, I'm going to recap where we were 2 weeks ago compared to where we are as I make this show. So let's take the S&P 500 in the US. Now that was around 4,200 2 weeks ago. Guess where we are? Around 4,200 yet again. The FTSE 100, we were around about the 7,000 mark. We're at 7,070 as I make this video. The bond yields, so if you go and look at the 10-year US Treasury yield, it was 1.56 2 weeks ago. It's actually dipped below 1.5%, which is quite interesting, but it's not a big change. All it's starting to show is maybe people are questioning the inflation trade at the moment, but nothing significant. If you look at all the other major indices, they're all pretty much trading at or near all-time highs, and that's in Europe. So take the DAX, it's a FTSE 250, for example, in the UK, and it's the S&P 500 or the Dow Jones, for example, in the US. So markets are kind of in a limbo as we go into the summer months, which sometimes does happen, but it looks like the market wants a sense of direction. If you look at the fear index, for example, that is down to 17. So that's the VIX compared to 19 2 weeks ago. The equivalent index, so the VXN, that fear index for the NASDAQ, so the tech stocks out there, is around about 21.5. It was 23 2 weeks ago. So almost you could have had last week's show, and this could be a day later where nothing really much has happened. Even if we go over to the commodities market, look at gold, still around that $1,900 level. If we look at Bitcoin, now Bitcoin had rallied, it pulled back, and we saw a big sell-off, and it got all the way down to $30,000. And now we saw a bit of a rally, but we pulled back again. We've retested that 30,000 level. So Bitcoin again is still stuck in limbo as it was 2 weeks ago. We had a retest of that 30,000 level. Could we now have reached a short-term bottom? And we're seeing a bit of a rebound towards the $36,000. So that'd be interesting to see what happens next. If we break below that $30,000 level, then we could start to see some of that risk sentiment, that fear, start to bleed into equity markets once again. So don't be surprised if we see a bit of a wobble in equity markets if we see more Bitcoin weakness. Now, if we take a look at market breadth, so that's the number of stocks, for example, that might be pushing above their 200-day moving average. So a measure of if markets are starting to build some kind of momentum underlying. We're seeing some uptick in certain indices, particularly in Europe, particularly in the FTSE 250, not so much in the US and not so much in the US tech stocks, but there is something building. We haven't got and reversed the fall in breadth that we've seen in recent months, but things are starting to look like they're trying to form a base potentially, but we've got to see what happens. Like I say, markets are looking for a catalyst to go one way or another. And we are still seeing some crazy speculative trades in things like GameStop. So there are some odd things going on in markets. Now, if we're looking for a catalyst, then perhaps we should look no further than the US Federal Reserve meeting around the 15th and 16th of June. So we'll see the Federal Reserve have another meeting about its monetary policy. That could potentially move markets, especially if we're going to get noises about concerns over inflation. And that's obviously something that's been spooking markets of late. And markets are becoming increasingly nervous that the Federal Reserve may start to tighten monetary policy. So that means unwinding QE and also raising interest rates. And on the 24th of June, we've got the Bank of England with its own interest rate setting meeting. And we will see if anything's going to change. It's not expected to, but again, it's more about the rhetoric and the narrative in the meetings, in the meeting minutes, I should say, afterwards. So they are probably going to be some of the biggest potentially market moving events to look towards at the end of the month. And obviously we're going to have more economic data along the way. So the message really is, it's as you were. And so that is it for this week on Damien's Midweek Markets. As ever, you can contact me, damien@moneytothemasses.com is the email address. Obviously, Twitter, money to the masses with the number 2. You can contact me on Instagram, and you can find us on Facebook as well. Don't forget to join our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/money to the masses. And of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel.